Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Falkirk Council Scrutiny Committee, Thursday, 9th of November. Purpose of scrutiny being that we look at reports that come forward and accentuate the positive and drill down on perhaps what could be perceived as negatives. If in the report, for example, something's red or amber, the first report that's coming up, there's quite a lot of greens in it, so it's fairly positive. So I just thought I'd set the scene for before we start. The first 4 items are for members only. So the first one is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
We do, Convener. We've got apologies from Councillor Anslow and Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 3, the minute of the meeting of Scrutiny Committee held on 7th September 2023. It's pages 2 to 10 on your agenda. Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any matters arising from that minute? Agenda item 4, rolling action log, pages 11 to 13 on your agenda. Is there any questions on the rolling action log? Councillor McCabe.
Good morning, Provost. Thank you. I've just got a couple of wee queries on the rolling action log. The first one, it's ID 629. It's on page 12 of the agenda. And I was just wondering, have we had any update from the executive on the introduction of this deposit return scheme? I realise it's not due until 9th of 11th, 24 next year, so we have a bit of time, but I was just wondering if we'd had any wee update on it at all.
Mr. Benny.
Thank you for the question. Just to say that a report went to executive to say that given the continuing uncertainty around the deposit return scheme, the council would seek to pursue a new contract for curbside collection of recyclable materials. So if I'm being honest, we await an idea and understanding of the national scheme, and until that point, we're just going to crack on and do our own thing.
Smashing, Malcolm. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Second question, Provost, ID 643. It's on page 13, I believe. Yeah. The Scrutiny in the past has asked for some reports to come to the Scrutiny Committee. I'm thinking of contact call centre. We've requested reports on roads and report on building maintenance. I see that this report was due to come, the roads report, roads maintenance was due to come to this meeting, and it's not come to this meeting. That's a wee bit disappointing. Is there any real reason for that? And can we try and ensure that, you know, when we do ask for these reports and for specific dates, that they do actually come in front of us? It's a wee bit of lag, I feel, that we could maybe be tightening up on. Thanks, Provost.
Mr. Benny.
Thanks again for the question. My understanding in this particular case is that obviously Falkirk's suffered a couple of significant storms in recent weeks, and the roads teams have been working really hard to try and mitigate against those, and that's taken up some capacity. The report is still scheduled to come next month, so I'm hoping that the Scrutiny Committee won't be too inconvenienced, and officers do take these reports seriously, and you know, apologies for not managing to make the deadline for this meeting.
Thanks again, Malcolm. I appreciate the answer. The only real question I have about that is that later on we actually talk about the percentage of carriageway length for maintenance, you know, and there are questions on roads which are coming up even within this report. So it would have been handy to have actually had the report from the roads team. But I do appreciate, you know, we have had some significant weather impacts. So thank you, Provost. I appreciate that.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. The next section is on service performance, and we'll go over to Mr. Ferry to explain that.
Thank you, Convener. It's just simply to say that at this part of the meeting, the reports that fall under service performance, which are the mid-year council plan performance report and local government in Scotland overview, are open not just to members of the committee, but all members of the council are entitled to participate in the discussions on these reports. And I see that we've got Councillor Garner, Councillor Murtagh and Councillor Spears joining us. So during the discussion, they have the opportunity to ask questions if they so wish.
Okay, thank you. So this one, Agenda Item 5, mid-year council performance plan. And Mr. Laurie, are you speaking to this report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Provost, and very good morning to all. So I'm going to briefly introduce the report, and my colleague Rebecca MacDonald, I think, is going to show some of the demonstration of the Power BI and some of the information we have on the website, so that members can appreciate some of that additional and more detailed and up-to-date information, which is available at all times to elected members and indeed members of the public. So this report is the mid-year public performance report for 23-24. It's the second of these reports since the approval of the first iteration of the council plan in September of last year, and therefore it concludes the reporting on year one of the council plan. But what it also does, Provost, it looks forward to year two of the recently approved refresh of the council plan, and details some of the additional performance information and results that we've selected from the local government benchmarking framework as part of that refresh of the council plan, to give a broader range of indicators with which we monitor the work that we're doing. So councils have a duty under the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003 to publicly report their performance in delivering services. This report is part of the council's compliance with that requirement. And as Appendix 2 to the report, you'll see a document called Falkirk Performs, which is also on the council's website. And this really sets out the approach that we're taking as a council to ensure that we have a robust and satisfactory approach to performance monitoring, performance measurement, and ensuring that we're delivering against what's set out in the council plan. And we do that through a combination of both local performance measures and measures selected from the local government benchmarking framework. What I would say is that as an organisation, I think it's really important that we have a good grip of performance, both in absolute terms, in terms of delivery against our own plans, but also in relative terms, which is where the benchmarking framework comes in. We can judge what our performance is like against other councils, and particularly other councils that have similar characteristics to our own. And members will be aware that when we had the best value review in January 2022, there were some issues and points made in that report in relation to our performance reporting arrangements. And what I think is pleasing now, and this was reflected in the annual audit report that came before the Audit Committee on Monday of this week, and all members will see that when it comes to the full council in December, is that Audit Scotland have clearly identified that our reporting arrangements have improved, and there's a really clear link to show our performance against the council plan. I think having gratefully accepted that accolade. My own view, Provost, is this is still work in progress, and maybe it will always be work in progress because there will always be issues that we wish to improve on. There will always be issues that require us to look in more detail at our performance and the impact of our performance. And what I said, I think, at the previous scrutiny committee, which I would repeat now, is that elected member scrutiny is a really important part of that, in terms of, questioning and challenging and identifying issues which are of importance to you in the report, and seeking clarity from officers about the progress that's being made. So in terms of the performance, the overview is set out in section 5 of the report and the key findings under each of the priorities and the enablers, and the full details are set out at Appendix 1. There's a lot of detail in there, but there are a range of officers in the call that can pick up any questions which members may have. And I think, just introducing the report, the other point I'd like to make, and I've referred to Appendix 1, which is the detailed performance, Appendix 2, which is FOC forms, which is our approach to managing and improving our performance. And Appendix 3 then sets out the additional local government benchmarking framework indicators, which were included in Year 2 of the Council Plan. So that's the Council Plan that you approved in September of this year. So whilst these aren't formally part of the report against last year's Council Plan, we just thought it'd be helpful to include these in the document. Again, it gives you a sense of our current level of performance in relation to these indicators. And clearly there'll be the next full report that comes forward to this committee in May of next year will include updates on all of the new suite of indicators included in Year 2. So, Provost, that's a fairly brief overview. I'll hand over to, I think, Rebecca now, in terms of giving us a bit more detail about the information that's available on performance on the website. Then after that, myself and colleagues happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kenneth, and thanks, Convener, for having the opportunity to talk to everyone this morning about what we have here. Firstly, good morning, and I also have Kerry Rayburn from the team on the call this morning, who will shortly take us through a demonstration on the dashboard that we have to show the performance for the period covered today. So I just want to sort of set the scene about the position that we have for our performance reporting, particularly the use of the latest tool that we've been driving forward on Powered BI, to use that as a dashboard framework to report performance, not just overall for the council, but in other areas as well. And hopefully you'll sort of start to see how we're pulling all this together to give meaningful, insightful information in a dashboard format that can help us with decision making and performance tracking, and indeed plan for performance improvements. So there have been various demos of dashboards over the last few months. In fact, Kerry did one at Scrutiny in June this year. It was also included in the member engagement briefings on the Council Plan that we had in August and September. And at one of the recent Lunch and Learn sessions for members, the Education, Pupil Absence and Attendance dashboard was also demoed. So any members that was on that call will have seen some of the features specific to that dashboard. Now, I'm using the word dashboard quite a lot and appreciate that, some of this language may be a wee bit technical, but if we keep it really simple, the purpose of each dashboard is just to make sure that we have accurate, secure, relevant data and insights available at the right time in a way that's easy for people to use and understand, and just make it transparent and that's accessible to everyone who needs it. The dashboards are actually integral to, Kenneth talked about Falkirk Performs, which is the Council's performance management framework, and the dashboards are integral to us evolving and making sure our performance management process and framework is as good as it can be. And it is an evolving sort of process that we're undertaking here. A number of dashboards have been produced across the Council to date, mostly for internal use at the moment. But you will see today the performance dashboard that's ready for scrutiny to review and for public consumption. And it's embedded in the council web pages, and Kerry will take you through that in a moment. But the work that we're doing in this area is getting some traction and actually a fair bit of attention. So just by means of listing what has been developed, just to give you a bit more information on this, we have originally developed the HR payroll dashboard, which gives us information to analyse what's happening in key workforce areas. There's also one in the management of potholes, which provides a roads asset management officer with key information on how these are managed. And we actually wanted to start work on some of the public-facing version of the potholes dashboard in the coming months, so that it is available to the public so they can see the progress being made in how we are managing pothole defects. And there's been some initial dashboards developed for financial reporting as well. And they are sort of quite fledgling, but they're helping pull together some of the budget information that we need so that it's easier to access and it's timely, to try and reduce some of the lags that we have and some of the information that we have being reported on. But most recently, I talked about the lunch and learn sessions, and recently we've had an education dashboard that's been developed, and that's to support the analysis on pupil absence and attendance. And that's really been key to some of the head teachers using this tool to understand the patterns emerging right across every school in the council, to allow them to take action and figure out, you know, what needs to be done to support our children and young people to be at school and enhance their learning journeys. So that's just a kind of brief list and summary of the dashboards that are currently in play. And there's more work to be done on all of this. And whilst the tools will help us drive performance and service improvements, they will also help create operational efficiencies. And probably one of the stark examples that I have of this is that when we implemented the education dashboard with head teachers, one of the head teachers actually said it used to take her 50 hours to create a spreadsheet with the management information needed to analyse pupil absence and attendance, and now she can access it in an instant on the dashboard. So those operational efficiencies, well, it might not be 50 hours across the board for every person that uses it. It's just trying to demonstrate how the sort of investment in this work and the end product can really help free up precious time so that we can go about delivering other aspects of what's in our council plan, and indeed our 3 priorities that's in the council plan, and strive to improve performance against all of those. So to do all the dashboard build, there is some technical expertise required, and we're building that expertise as we go. But what we are doing must be right. And I say that because other councils want to mirror what we're doing. And indeed, with the partner organisation who's supporting us build these tools, Falkirk Council is actually running a masterclass at the National Digital Scotland Conference later this month to showcase what Falkirk Council has done. And the work that we've done, particularly on the education dashboard, has piqued the interest of an ITN documentary as well, that's been made through one of our education partners. And they're looking at a way to see if they can help tell the Falkirk story as part of that documentary that they're trying to make, and sort of just showcase what we've done. Now, it might sound like I'm blowing the trumpet a wee bit for what the council's achieved here, and I suppose I am, but I also feel that we need to, because if we want to continue this work, we need to do it in the most economical way possible. And by promoting some of the achievements that we've made in creating these dashboards, we're trying to seek collaborative opportunities, probably with other local authorities who want to make the same developments that we have. And if we can sort of pull together resources, whether they be financial, skills, people, whatever it might be, if there's a way of pulling that together, then we need to kind of showcase what we're doing, get people to come on the journey with us and see what we can do. I think we're also trying to attract some other external funding sources as well, so that we can do a bit more investment and take this all forward to enhance what we have by way of data and information to support council performance improvement, as I said, and indeed enhance decision making. So that's the position in the here and now about where we are in this dashboard journey and the use of our Power BI tool. And convener, Kenneth, if it's okay, I'd like to just hand over to Kerry now to do a demo on the latest iteration of the performance dashboard that we had that supports the report that we have under review today. So Kerry, can I hand over to yourself?
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, there is a link in section 5 of the cover report in your papers today to the dashboard. You can also navigate to the dashboard via the website in the Falkirk Performs area of the site. You can just click on the green button here and the dashboard will load. So the dashboard, we've kept the layout quite simple and quite easy to navigate. It shows each of the council's 3 priorities across the top here, and each of the 3 enablers across the bottom. So users would click an area of interest. So for instance, if you wanted to look at education, you could click the icon here for priority 2. And you're faced with a drop-down menu. So clicking on any of these success measures will give you some more information. The action statement or the we will statement in the council plan is auto-populated at the top of the page here. And then it gives you the target that we're working towards, the result for the period, and the status achieved. So this one is target achieved. And it's indicated by a green line down the side here. We also have target just missed, which would be amber, or target red, which target not achieved, which would be red. If you want a little bit more information, there's a new button that we've created since last time when we demonstrated this at Scrutiny in June, and that's the trends button. So this is the place that we will demonstrate performance for all indicators going forward, and we'll build up that trend data over time so that you can see how something is performing. If you click the back button, and an indicator is one of the local government benchmarking framework indicators, there are 2 additional buttons to be had here. One is a button where you can compare performance with the Scotland average figure. So you can see here is the Falkirk figure in red, and down below in blue we've got the Scotland figure, and then there's data over time, so you can see how both have performed over time, which is really helpful to understand where we're at the moment. Again, click the back button. There's also another button here for LGBF, or local government benchmarking framework indicators, that allows you to compare with similar councils. So family groups are dictated by the Improvement Service, and those are councils of a similar size, similar demographics, and they're helpful, sometimes more helpful than looking at the Scotland figure overall. So you can see here we've got one of our family group performing better than us when it comes to literacy for P1, 4 and 7 pupils. Then we've got Falkirk, and then we've got the other councils in our family group. So that is just an overview of one of the indicators. Obviously, if there's other areas of interest, you can click the icon and do the same for those. This is, again, a work in progress. We are looking at keeping it nice and simple. We could have laid out percentages here, or, you know, more statistical information, but I think it keeps it nice and clean. And if you want to have any more information on how to use it, a one-to-one demonstration, or if you have any questions or builds for the dashboard, then please do get in touch with either Rebecca or myself, and we'd be happy to take that on board. I'll pass you back to Rebecca now.
Thanks, Kerry, for that demo. And just to reiterate the offer, you know, offline, we would be happy to show you the other dashboards as well. The other dashboards do contain some sensitive information, so not appropriate for, you know, broadcast, I guess, at Scrutiny today. But we can do behind the scenes demonstrations of what these other dashboards look like as well. So you get a real feel for what's being developed here and the information available and how we sort of want to move it forward. So please take us up on that offer if this is at all of interest to you. But it's certainly the way forward. And as I said earlier, we are a wee bit of the envy of other councils. They want to have something similar. And I guess, you know, that's the journey we now need to go on and do it in the most economical way, as I said earlier. So with that, Kenneth, convener, I'll hand back just maybe to open for any further questions.
Thanks very much, Ms MacDonald. I'd like to ask a question. We see the performance information based on success measures at Scrutiny, but that's a standalone set of data. When will we see a more integrated performance report that shows these success measures linked in with financials to show the overall cost of performing at certain levels? And is this something that Power BI dashboard might be able to do? And could it also cross-reference areas such as staff absence so that we see the levels and costs such as overtime being used to support performance?
Convener, I'm happy to come in there. When I was listing the dashboards that we currently have available and in production and in use by managers across the council, the end game, I suppose, is to do exactly what you described there. So we have the HR and payroll workforce dashboard, which gives us insights about staff absence levels and sort of trends emerging across our workforce. We have the fledgling finance dashboards as well. We clearly have the performance dashboards in play, and the end game of all of this is to trying to sort of pull all that information together so that you know, as an officer in the council, for example, as a manager in the council, I can see the component parts of what my service is trying to drive. So me as a service manager, I would be able to see my own workforce trends. I would be able to see the cost of those trends in the financial piece of the dashboard and how that's impacting my performance levels. Similarly, you know, a road service manager would see something similar. They would see the kind of workforce trends emerging, the appropriate financials around all of that in terms of, you know, what's the cost of absenteeism, the cost of maybe commissioning work, and how that's affecting performance levels. And so what we need to try and build behind the scenes, and it does take a bit of technical expertise, is to show that integrated, all these pieces of manager information coming together so that a manager can drill down and say, well, actually, you know, on a given week, my absence levels might be X in terms of staff absence, but what's that costing me? And help me make good decisions about, you know, do I need to put on overtime to actually make sure our performance remains steady, or take some other course of action? But you're giving them those insights, that information, and the ability to make good business decisions to support service delivery as we move forward. So we need to sort of adopt or figure out the timeline to get that integrated piece established. It's a wee bit technical, but that's why we're starting the showcasing, I suppose, of what we have on offer just now, to see, is there any other expertise out there in this kind of Scottish landscape, whether it's authorities or other digitally inclined organisations that could perhaps help us kind of bring all this together. And certainly some of the partnership organisations that we're working with are really keen to help us do this. But I go back to the point I made about the economics of this. We need to do it in the most economical way and make sure we're maximising, you know, the opportunity to get a good product, but within the financial envelope that we have. So hopefully that gives some assurance, Convener, that the work is in hand. It will take a wee bit of time to pull together, but that's definitely the aspiration here.
Thank you very much for that, Ms MacDonald. Very much appreciated. Before we go to Councillor Murtagh, I'll just say we've got Councillor Hannah here in the room. At the beginning of the session, we mentioned those online, but just to let you know, Councillor Hannah's here in the room. So we'll go to Councillor Murtagh for if you've got a question on Power BI.
Absolutely, and thank you, Provost. I mean, I have to say, I find the tools extraordinarily impressive, and some of the more in-depth demos on, as you say, some of the lunch and learns we've had have been really fantastic, and it's a great tool, and I think really useful for the public as well as members to have this information. Of course, information is only as useful as the quality of it going in, and I suppose that's my question in terms of where the processes of the council can, you know, I mean, they'll be different in each of our departments, as it were, depending on the type of data that's been entered. And obviously some of the excellent demonstration of the attendance data, you know, a lot of that already, you know, from import systems that are already in place is quite straightforward, but in other areas much more difficult. So do we have a kind of standard approach policy about how we would review the quality of that information going in, or is it down to the different kind of audit processes, you know, from a sort of subject by subject area? Can you kind of explain a bit about how we assure the quality of the data going in is what we want to be, you know, confident in putting out there? Thank you.
Ms MacDonald?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Thanks for the question, Councillor Martin, the opportunity to sort of talk through this a bit more. I think this is where some of the technical expertise that we need in the council is really key, because we have good information. We are data rich, actually, in terms of the information that we have in our systems in the council. And in some instances, you know, if we're being really honest about it, some of that information's in spreadsheets and pieces of paper. So to some extent, you know, the old Tom Peters adage that data rich, information poor, that's what we really kind of need to tighten up on. And as we've developed these dashboards, part of the kind of technical expertise required is to look at the system, look at the quality of the data, as you just outlined there, Councillor Murtagh, and think through what cleanup needs to happen to ensure the accuracy and the timely feeds from a system into the dashboard takes place, and more importantly, that it remains secure at all times and sort of doesn't go into a realm that becomes unsecure. So there's a real heightened focus on that. And if I can just maybe speak about it maybe in more plain terms. So our education core system is CMIS. Now, there are other systems, but we focus on CMIS, which has been the core system to help us develop the pupil absence and attendance dashboard that we have. Now, a lot of work went into working with CMIS partners, and indeed they have another supplier called Group Call. The council and our other partners called SWORD. Sounds quite complicated, but actually it's taken 4 organisations to look at the CMIS data and make sure it can come out in the dashboard with that sort of assurance, security, accuracy and timeliness that we needed to produce these dashboards. So part of the process in this kind of Power BI journey is just to do exactly what you said there, Councillor Murtagh. Look at what we have, make sure it's good data and sort of flow it through. I mean, recently, I guess people are saying now about data, it's like the kind of new oil, you know, but if it's unrefined, it can't really be used. And a wee bit like oil, you know, it needs to be changed into gas, plastic, chemicals to create something of value. And I suppose that's what we have here. We are data rich, in some pockets, perhaps information poor, but it's how we take that data and make it into something valuable, do a changeover that gives us something insightful like the dashboards we're trying to develop. But with the CMIS example that I just said, you know, 32 councils are using that system. So we've been pioneering. We've worked with the 4 organisations to produce something. But actually, if we can hook into other councils who want to embark on a similar sort of set of processes, the kind of CMIS data structures are all sort of very similar for each council. We need that collaboration, I think, now to kind of move this to the next stage and pool resources across the 32 councils to do it, working with CMIS and giving them support nationally as well to kind of make sure this is all workable. So that's when it gets quite big, quite complex. But that's, again, go back to why we need to showcase some of the work so that we can, where there are common systems across the 32 councils, how can we bring this together? And CMIS is just an example where, you know, 32 councils use it. How do we go through that quality assurance process and create a meaningful dashboard for each council that, you know, allows the drill downs and everything else that we've got? So, Councillor Murtagh, did that answer?
It does. It's helpful. I think it's kind of, whether, I suppose it's like if you think about the local government benchmarking framework and how that's pulled together in that kind of, you know, consistent measuring the different local authorities that are grouped together in a different way. So to make it relevant, you know, you can pull that data together, make it relevant. But I do remember in a previous scrutiny committee, perhaps my first, about a director saying that they didn't have any confidence in the metrics that were actually there being relevant to this. So it's that way of saying, you know, it still has to be relevant, and we have to have an overall understanding that the quality that's going in into these excellent systems that are so useful has that behind. So I would suppose from a scrutiny point of view, it would still be really important when individual reports come forward that there's an understanding about how that information has been collated and reviewed to make sure that, you know, it's robust when we come to the comparison, or else if we lose confidence in the data that's there, then it's difficult then to take forward things which that data says. So I suppose it's just to make sure that we have that consistent approach across the council, and that maybe, you know, because I always felt like the local government benchmarking framework report, when it comes, is a really difficult thing to pick out individual things. But when the service things come to scrutiny, that we can maybe have something that says, right, well, this is how it's going to be feeding into the dashboard. This is how it's been quality controlled, so that there's that clear robustness of the data that makes it usable and the confidence. So, but your answer is really helpful, and I think in general this concept really helpful to councillors and to the public. So thank you for your report.
Thank you. Councillor Spears, do you have a question on Power BI?
I do. Data rich, information poor. What a statement, Rebecca. And by the way, I think you're giving a tremendous presentation today. There is nothing really mentioned about performance. And let me use roads and potholes as an example. We are at the sharp point of public reaction. We've got to walk the streets and hear people's opinion, and performance seems really poor. I get constant daily reminders about potholes in the roads, and it can take us months sometimes to repair them, especially on strategic parts of our infrastructure. Will there be a whole data feed out on performance?
Mr. MacDonald?
Thank you, Councillor Spears, for that question. As I say, the Roads Asset Manager Officer uses an internal dashboard to track the performance of tackling pothole situations as they arise. So he's got that at his fingertips. But what we need to do is try and move that into the kind of public domain so that the public have access and sort of see how these things are progressing. Now, that is a work in progress behind the scenes. And as I say, we can do a bit of a demo offline with members if you're interested to sort of show how the dashboard currently looks, but we do need to develop it for the public eye so that they can see progress. But I suppose the kind of more general point, I don't know, Malcolm, if you want to comment further on the sort of pothole performance per se.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. I think the statistics that we get from the local government benchmarking framework outline where Falkirk sits nationally, and actually performance is relatively positive. Now, that's not to say that there are not improvements to be made made to our road network. That's always the case with all road networks across Scotland. I think it's also reflective of the fact that the council is facing budget pressures like all local authorities, and therefore there isn't a blank check that can be written to repair all the roads. It's an ongoing maintenance project, and one which I think before my time the council acknowledged and did so by needing to add additional funding to try and move the roads to an improved state. So it's an ongoing position. Always happy to speak to elected members about particular cases if they've got of a incident in the road that is taking a long time to be repaired. I'm not familiar with any of those instances. I obviously get hundreds of elected member inquiries every year, and I'm not familiar with an instance whereby a repair has stretched into that particular time frame. So always happy to talk about specifics, but in general terms, I think the guys are doing a great job given the difficult financial position that we face. But always, if elected members feel strongly that roads is an area where they would like to see investment, and that's obviously something that can be discussed as part of the budget planning process.
Thanks, Mr. Bainey. Any other questions on Power BI?
Thank you. Could I make a suggestion that in the front of the public dashboard for this, that you actually have a definition of what constitutes a pothole? Because I have, like all the other councillors, I have a full caseload of potholes.
Yeah, Councillor Forrest, could we maybe try and stick to Power BI rather than getting a debate about potholes on roads? Okay. It's just a lot of it is delamination, but I really welcome the dashboard. I think it's going to be a very, very positive step. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Forrest. Now, I agree with Councillor Forrest. I think that this will evolve over time, and we'll get real-time data, and it will be good data that's presented to allow us to make proper decisions based on factual information in real time. So we'll now move on to questions for the mid-year public performance report, the council plan. I've got a question. Page 6 in the supplementary agenda, table 1. The overall percentage for target not achieved has changed from 21 to 24%. How does the council ensure this does not continue to slide further?
Thank you, Provost. I'll pick up on that in the first instance. Others may wish to contribute. I mean, this is a dynamic situation. I think I said in my introduction that we're probably never going to get to a position where we're satisfied with performance, because there's always more we can do and things we can do differently. I think what's important is that you look at the individual indicators that make up that 24%, and that's what tells you the story of why we're in the position that we are. And some of these indicators, there might have been external factors which have impacted on it. On others, it's simply perhaps the case that we haven't been able to progress things as fast as we thought. Our targets were perhaps over-optimistic, or it might relate to financial issues. So in a sense, I think it is good that we have that table on page 6 that sets out the overall achievement. But I think the importance lies in the individual indicators. Why is it that particular issues have taken longer or proving more difficult or more intractable to take forward? And clearly, what we're endeavouring to do is deliver 100% against what we said we do in the corporate plan. That's always going to be an enormous challenge. I said earlier that I think it's a work in progress, but really the scrutiny at an individual level is set out in the report, enables you to understand why these percentages are as they are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My next question on page 6, supplementary agenda page table 1. The priority supporting stronger and healthier communities is achieving 38% of targets. That's up 33% at end of year report, 1st of June. This still represents significantly fewer targets being met when compared to other priority areas, 67% promoting opportunities and educational attainment and reducing inequalities, and 64% supporting a thriving economy and green transition. Can the reasons for this be outlined, and how will this be addressed moving forward?
Provost, again, I might have an initial take on that. I mean, I suppose in a way I refer to, I'd refer to my previous response. So if you look at pages 15 through to 17, then that sets out the details. And of course, much of this relates to the work we're doing in taking forward our support and coordination with local organisations. So if you look at the measures where we're falling short, they relate to asset transfer, they relate to participatory budgeting, they relate to issues around about anchor organisations and some of the challenges we have in terms of, for example, costs at leisure centres. Now, all of these things tie back to, for example, the SPR and the progress that we're making in that. So I think we've got a really clear plan ahead of us in terms of how we're going to deal with these matters. But if you want to pick up on some of these individual indicators and themes, and I'm sure that colleagues will be happy to pick up on that. But that detail sits in pages 15 to 17 of the report.
Anyone like to pick up on some of the indicators? Councillor Forrest.
Page 16, referring to the we will coordinate and develop the way that we inform. The progress update refers to improvements to be implemented in phase 4. When is phase 4? What are the improvements and how are they anticipated to impact the overall percentage? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Algie?
Well, given that Karen's offering, I'll give her that opportunity. Happy to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So phase 4 is phase 4 of our community choices, work, and that has now commenced. It has launched. So that's part of the work that we're now doing to encourage community participation in the Community Choices project. And members may recall the report that was submitted to committee previously on this. I think it was the executive that considered it, that showed we've made really good progress in improving engagement through Community Choices. So that's where phase 4 comes in, and we've developed that to learn from all of the previous phases. So this would be the last phase of our work on Community Choices, and there is an improvement in terms of the percentage of budget that has been made available for participatory budgeting. There's a separate piece of work which is also now looking at ward-based budgeting, which will help us to further develop approaches to participatory budgeting as we go forward. So that would take place after we've completed phase 4, and that's probably where we are on that particular indicator. I hope that helps to answer that.
It does indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Binney, then Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. I just want to say thank you for this report. I do know an awful lot of work's gone into it, a lot of your time, a lot of your commitment. Anyway, I do have a question. Page 9 of the performance report. I'm really pleased to learn that there's been recent improvements to the cost of collecting council tax, and I'm sure that's due to the excellent and professional revenue staff you've got. Though, in comparison at 5.21, the gross rent arrears measure is below 14% of the rent due, and national recovery activity continues to be inhibited. So can you elaborate why the process of collecting council tax has improved and not the collection of gross rent arrears? And why is this nationally inhibited? I think I do have the answer, but I'm not sure. And can you elaborate on the challenges, and is equal resource spent to balance collection of both? And I do have a note on the equalities that actually is related to this. And you've said that we don't have an EPIA, whether respective or not, but I need to know that to understand the groups that are struggling financially and highlight the areas to support more. So to me that would be relevant if there's gross rent arrears. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Binney. We'll go to Ms Algie for an answer.
Yes, thank you, conveners. So first of all, the resources for both council tax collection and rent collection sit within our Housing and Communities Division within Paul Ferguson's team. So that work is undertaken with an appropriate level of resource to pick up that first point. In terms of the collection of rent, there is definitely a reduction there, and we are seeing that issue come about due to the cost of living crisis. It's not unique to Falkirk, because you would assume it's definitely not unique to us. We have, however, taken some steps, and we recently launched the new support package to help those who are in rent arrears. So that launched in June, and we're working through that with families who are in rent arrears to see how we can support them. The important thing, I think, to note is that as individuals take up that offer of support, they're also given advice about benefits that they can claim and other support they may be able to achieve. And I think in the whole scheme of things, to try and tackle what is essentially about the cost of living crisis that we're in, that's a really important part of this, as much as it is about supporting the collection of rent, which is really important to the council and to our housing arrangements. So I hope that helps to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Algie. Yeah, regarding that support that you're giving to people that have got rent arrears, is it possible we could have a measurement perhaps in 6 months' time? Because the way I see it, people got rent arrears, we don't want them to have further rent arrears. So if they're getting support, we as councillors have to see some progress and improvement in that. So I'm not sure if 6 months would be enough time, or perhaps a year coming back to see the progress in this matter.
Yeah, thank you. we are continuing to monitor the collection of rent arrears. So although this is, part of the 6 monthly report that you see, and it will continue to be part of that. So when we next do our update, that would still be in there for you to review and to see where we are with rent arrears. But in an operational sense, we are looking at that all of the time to look at what other support we can put in place to assist those who are in arrears with their rent. So there's a lot of work taking place there. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Binney. We'll now go to Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. I'm going back to the pages 15 to 17, in particular page 17, where it says that support and safeguard children where protection concerns have been raised. The measure that's used clearly has come up red because of our failure to meet that measure. But the narrative says that it's no longer seen as a true measure of keeping children safe, and it's going to be removed from the plan going forward. Now, I do recognise that there can be situations where the data that you're collecting isn't actually measuring what it is you're trying to get at. But I would wonder if someone could say a little more about what's going to replace it, because we clearly have to have a measure to replace that one and not just remove it and say, let's not bother measuring it at all.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hannah. Ms Algie.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, we have actually taken that measure out within the new indicators that are in the council plan agreed in September. Now that's because there are new child protection arrangements locally, so it means that that particular indicator isn't now appropriate to measure, but that's not to say we've not got other indicators in there that assist us in that, on that basis. Now I can get some information to Councillor Hannah separately on what that information is, but that's the reason for taking it out, and it's because of those new procedures for child protection.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you for that. Clearly, yes, I would be interested in seeing the details. We just need to be assured that there are true measures that are being used.
Mr. Lloyd.
I just wanted to say that as chair of the Public Protection Committee, which oversees issues around about child and adult protection, amongst other sensitive issues, we do have a pretty substantial range of indicators which we monitor and look at on a quarterly basis. So I'd say that, as a service, Children and Family Social Work is very on top of that. I mean, it's a service which, as all members know, is under huge pressures and has really significant challenges there. But both the Child Protection Committee itself and the Public Protection Committee keep a really close overview of that. And as Karen says, what we've done is we've got different indicators which we brought into the new version of the council plan. I think they're more appropriate. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, Councillor Hannah, what they are, but it is an area where we do have a lot of data. We do keep a really close eye on that. Of course, there's rightly and important a very high degree of scrutiny in relation to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I mean, I am aware of what has gone on. I do get reports through the IJB as well in terms of public protection. It was just the way in which it appears in this particular document was perhaps a little unfortunate, and I'm sure that can be corrected.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Councillor Aitchison.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. This, with reference to it's the report on page 17 and 21. The report states that the cost per attendance of both libraries at £8 and 8p and sports and leisure facilities at £7 and 93p has not changed since the 22-23 end of year report. Now, if you refer back to the Scrutiny Committee minutes from 6th of June, this shows that the service manager stated that the cost per attendance of libraries and sports and leisure facilities had reduced to £6 and 49p and £6.29 respectively. So the first question, has this been an error in the report, or has the cost risen back to previous reported numbers?
Mr. Gillespie. Ms. Algie.
Thank you, Convener. I can certainly speak about the library costs. So no, it's not that they've gone up, and we're doing an awful lot of work to bring those costs down. Members may recall from a previous scrutiny report that costs in both libraries and leisure were particularly high following the period of COVID, and they've come down significantly following that. So there's a huge amount of work going on in both of those areas to bring the costs down. The figures are not available at this point in time just due to the nature of reporting of the LGBF indicators. So that's still about waiting for those to come out. But behind the scenes operationally, we do record those. But for the way this is reported at the moment, that particular LGBF indicator isn't available until we get the national data for it. And that's the reason you've still got the same figure in there, is my understanding of that one.
Councillor Aitchison.
Yeah, that's an answer, but it's not a very helpful answer, I must admit, but thank you. Second part, why is a progress update not provided for sports and leisure and library facilities on page 17 and 21?
Ms Algie.
Thank you, Convener. That's simply because of what I said, that the local government benchmarking framework indicators are not yet available, which is why there's no information there. If I can speak about libraries, there was an information briefing sent to all members yesterday on the progress that is being made on the back of the library's strategic plan, and that's about improving performance in libraries and reducing the costs in libraries. So that was issued to all members yesterday on that. So hopefully that provides Councillor Aitchison with information needed, but if you've got further questions, I'd be happy to pick those up out with committee if that would be of assistance.
Thank you. And is there any information on sport and leisure? We've not had anything from that or regarding the figures, or is that just the same issues with that?
Ms Algie. Oh, Mr Benny, apologies.
Thank you. Can I understand the question? As I understand the question is why has the figure not changed? And the figure's not changed because we only get the information from the local government benchmarking framework once a year. But is there an additional question that you'd like about sport and leisure in general?
Well, just there isn't any progress update or anything in the report or figures, or just basically the same answer as Karen gave?
Well, as I've just explained, I can't change the figure because the figure comes out once a year. The progress update is clearly that we have an ongoing strategic property review that's looking to rationalise the council's sport and leisure estate, and in doing that, that should reduce the cost per visitor significantly. And you'll be aware also there's an elected member PDP underway, which is reviewing the sport and leisure area, which is a cross-party working group, and will engage with all those members and bring a report back to the executive with a view of what the future vision of sport and leisure provision in the Falkirk area is. Hopefully that's enough of an update on progress.
Yeah, I'd still maybe like to ask both of you. I know you says there's an annual figure and this is given 6 months. If I can compare this back to June, when the figures were £8.08 and £7.93, and it's reduced to £6.49 and £6.29 respectively for both areas. Would you anticipate it to still be low, or would you anticipate it to go back to the original level in the yearly figures that will come?
Ms Algie or Mr Benny?
I'm not keen to speculate. I think that the attendance figures, as I understand them within the sport and leisure area, are positive, and we're making good progress to get back to a position that we were in before COVID. But those figures aren't in front of us, and I don't think it's sensible for me to speak in detail about predicting what figures will be. They'll be what they are, and then we can talk about what they are when they're in front of us.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because it's perhaps maybe something that maybe even shouldn't have been in the report then if we don't have conclusive figures. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Aitchison. Could I just make an observation that
Yeah, sorry, Prof.
The figures show £8.08 and £7.93, and a previous report, Mr Gillespie said the figures were dropped to £6.49 and £6.29 respectively, but this report still shows £8.08 and £7.93. So is that just an error in this report? Mr Lawrie.
Thank you. I mean, two things. I think it picks up on the point that Councillor Aitchison was making as well. So the figures that come from the local government benchmarking framework come annually, and these are the figures we've reported. As Councillor Aitchison identified, other figures have been shared with members, and I think if my view now, looking at this report, is it would have been helpful in the progress update if we'd said that these are the LGBF figures and they're reported once a year, but we'd also reflected on other information that was perhaps available to us just to give that context. And I think that would have been helpful in picking up both on Councillor Aitchison's point and on the question you've just raised, Provost.
I think that would have been helpful in giving an explanation for the figures. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Lawrie. Thanks, Councillor H. Any other questions? Councillor Forrest.
I'm going to go back to our Director of Police Services, page 25, referring to the "we will push to become net zero by 2030. Could Mr Benny explain what the target value of 3.61 refers to in this?
Mr Benny.
Thank you for the question. I don't have the specific detail that you're looking for on that question. I'm happy to get the relevant officer to give you the specific emission information that you're requesting.
Thanks, Mr Benny. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. That would be helpful, because figure without any reference is, it's no good to me, I'm afraid. So thank you. I would appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Forrest. I think you're right. The value 3.61 is totally meaningless. So it needs to be, what's the index? What are we referring to? Any other questions? Councillor Aitchison.
Yeah, probably for the Chief Executive. Why do the we wills outlined in the Falkirk performance framework not mirror that of the mid-year performance report? Examples include, but not limited to, alleviating homelessness, housing stock, and embedding equalities.
Mr Lawrie.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. So members will recall at the September council meeting, we refreshed the council plans. So this is an update on performance against year one of the council plan. And in Falkirk Performs, we're setting out the new we wills, which are in the year two of the council plan. So that explains the discrepancy. Falkirk Performs is dealing with the most up-to-date information. This is a retrospective report on year one of the council plan.
Okay, I have a question. Page 57. The quartile percentage for the priority supporting a thriving economy and green transition is trending down when relating to the local government benchmarking framework. Does this suggest that the council is simply maintaining standard while other councils improve? And is the Director of Police Service satisfied that progress is still being made? Mr Benny?
Apologies. Could I just get the page number again? I missed that at the start.
Page 57.
Okay, so on page 57, I see three particular performance indicators. Is there one in particular that you're interested in, or is it all three?
It was all three, actually.
Right, okay. So procurement spend on local firms is something that the council's committed to improving, but it's not something always in the gift of the council to achieve, because you need to find firms that are able to deliver the services that the council's looking for, and that they can do that at a competitive rate. So that is a work in progress. The GVA per capita, my own personal view would be that there's been some significant decisions taken by the council in the last 18 months with regard to the growth deal, the tax increment finance scheme, and the impending fourth Green Freeport, which offer a lot of positivity about the direction of travel for the Falkirk area. So I'm keen to that we reflect on the positive direction of travel there. And with regard to the percentage of total household waste recycled, that is something that all councils have struggled with following the COVID period. But I am confident that we can continue to push on that and improve performance in the coming years.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Benny. I've got another question. Page 16, referring to the we will encouraging the development of a strong and independent third sector. The success is measured against the increased establishment of anchor organisations across the life of the plan. However, the progress update states that the term anchor organisation still needs defined. How can this be a competent success measure if there is no definition for the term? Ms. Algie?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Convener, this is one of the indicators that we have amended for the new plan, recognising that it's probably not set out within year one of our council plan appropriately, just as you've outlined. So for the council plan as we go forward, we have amended that. But just to give members the reassurance as well that we are working within our communities teams. I think members are aware that we have a new community manager who is now working with colleagues and partners on how we develop more support and indeed an anchor organisation or organisations out within our communities to provide that support. So work is definitely ongoing. There's also, as members will be aware, a PDP that will commence shortly on community engagement that will also consider these types of matters. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Algie. Any other questions? Councillor Binney, did you have a question on workforce? Did you mention that at one point? You're on mute, Councillor Binney.
Actually, I've got two questions, but it's not in the performance report. It's actually on the local government in Scotland overview.
Okay, we'll save it till the local government.
Right, okay, that's lovely.
Any other questions? Recommendations. So I'll just go back to recommendations. It was recommended that Scrutiny 1 notes the report and scrutinises the Council's 2023-24 mid-year performance plan. 2 notes the updated performance management framework Falkirk performs. 3 notes additional information for a selected local government benchmarking framework performance results, where more timely data is now available, which will be reflected in the Council's public performance report going forward. Can we agree the recommendations? Members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. We'll just now have a short comfort break, maybe 10 minutes, and we'll go to the local government one. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Next item on the agenda is Local Government in Scotland Overview 2023. And is it yourself, Ms MacDonald, that's going to speak to that?
It is. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So everyone, this is an annual report that covers the key messages identified by the Accounts Commission in the Local Government in Scotland Overview 2023 report. And the whole report is available in Appendix 1 for reference. There is also an Appendix 2 in the papers today, which provides summary information as to how Falkirk Council is responding to the national messages noted by the Accounts Commission in that Appendix 1 paper. So I will try to keep this overview brief, because really the beef is well documented in what's been reported today. Section 4 of the cover report outlines the Accounts Commission report, the fact that it was published in May this year by Audit Scotland, and that it is the third in a series of reports that reflects on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The report is non-council specific, but looks across the local government sector and reports key messages and recommendations which councils should be assessing themselves against. Section 5 of the cover report presents a summary of these key messages and recommendations for councils, which cover a range of themes from finance and resources, community needs and inequalities, collaboration in the context of councils working more collaboratively with local partners, communities and third sector, leadership, and also recognising the increasing workforce challenges faced by local authority. So those themes are documented. And whilst the scale and impact of the challenges set out in the key messages are significant, collectively within Falkirk Council, there has been an acute awareness of all of these, and work is underway to mitigate, where possible, any risk that these pose to council service provision. So Appendix 2, as mentioned, provides a summary of the collective work that is underway across the council, and I would draw members' attention to the last column in the appendix that shows a compilation of some of the key initiatives instigated across the council to mitigate against the challenges identified by the council, the Accounts Commission. Now, I would say that many of the initiatives listed here have featured in recent reports to members, and in particular, the activities recently reported as part of the set of reports considered by Council in September this year, and that was the refresh of the Council Plan, the financial strategy and the workforce strategy. So hopefully as members read that last column in Appendix 2, there is a familiarity of the work being undertaken and it has been reported through past reports. And so whilst collectively this is a snapshot of the here and now, I think it's, there needs to be a continued steadfast focus on the challenges that have been reported by the Accounts Commission in this report. And we need as a council to think through how this will be woven into the delivery of the council's key strategic plans in the year ahead and beyond, and in particular the work referenced in the council plan, financial strategy and the workforce strategy. So, as I said at the start, a brief overview. The beef is in the Appendix 1 reported by Audit Scotland. And I think, Convener, I'll just return to the recommendations in the report, which are to note the key messages set out in the Accounts Commission Local Government in Scotland Overview 2023 report, and note that Falkirk Council already has a range of plans and actions in place which are working towards addressing the key initiatives identified in the report. So with that, Convener, I'll finish there, and along with colleagues from services, be open to taking questions. Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, Ms MacDonald. So before we go to questions, I'd just like to say the council does face challenging financial times, and we have done for the past 10 years. And the next 5 years, going to see £64 million worth of savings to be achieved. So it's a difficult time, and it puts a lot of strain on the council. And the recent announcement of the council tax freeze doesn't help things either. So my first question is on page 24, financial and resources. The report outlines the need to make difficult choices on spending priorities and service provision. This is a message that is continually relayed to members. Is the Chief Executive satisfied that the Council can make these difficult choices? Mr Lawrie.
Thank you, Provost. I suppose the honest answer to that is no, not entirely. I think we've you've said there's an enormous challenge. There is a significant financial gap. The financial strategy which members received in September set out the options, the ways of bridging that gap. So council tax, increased fees and charges, savings. These are the three permanent routes to dealing with the gap. And then we have service concessions available to us, which can enable us to delay difficult decisions, but they don't enable us to not make these decisions because they simply, if we spend them, they're gone. So, I mean, this is something which discussion is ongoing. There's been some discussion about the financial strategy group about this, and I think what's really important in terms of next steps. So, I think as officers, we're really clear about the challenge and the kind of decisions that implies. I think as members, you're very clear about the overview of that position and the options that are available to you. But I think the next step for us is kind of working out more of that detail. So, for example, we've articulated what about, I think it's about 34 million of cuts might look like. What will the additional 30 million or so we need to find? What would that look like? And so that members can then begin to get into that space about taking decisions about whether it's council tax increases, whether it's the use of savings. And I think the other thing alongside that is we talk about the potential use of service concessions for investing in our communities. So if we don't use them to temporarily plug the budget gap, then there's an opportunity to invest in our communities. But that means we need to take some of the really difficult budget or council tax decisions at an earlier point. And that was the challenge that was set out in the September financial strategy report. It's still the challenge that we face now, and it's going to require, as I said elsewhere in the report from the Accounts Commission, we're going to have that, robust leadership across officers and elected members in order to take these kinds of decisions that are ahead of us. So I think as a council, we've been really clear about the routes available to us to deal with this challenge, but we still need to fully engage in that challenge and take these difficult decisions. And as you say, Provost, the imposition of a 1-year council tax freeze reduces the flexibilities available to us during that first year. So it adds to the challenge. So I forget precisely what your question was, Provost, my apologies. But in terms of am I satisfied we're doing everything we need to do, then no, not yet. We're clear about the challenge, but we've not yet fully scoped the solution.
I think it was partly about making these difficult choices, I think that probably councils will have to make that decision once they're presented with the choices. So there's a lot of work to be done. My next question is the Chief Executive satisfied that the actions and plans already in place cover the recommendations set out in the overview from the Audit Commission?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I mean, there's nothing in this overview report which comes as a surprise to any of us, I don't think. I mean, there's a very clear shared view, I think, across local government about the nature of the challenges that we all face, and across the country and in different local authorities, there might be differences in terms of the very particular pressures that individual authorities face. But broadly speaking, we're all dealing with the same challenges. And by having, Rebecca referred to that suite of reports that came forward in September, by having a really clear sense of what our priorities are, by having a very clear sense of our financial strategy, the challenges ahead of us and how we have to deal with them, and also by through our workforce plans, because the the overview report does talk in quite some detail about the kind of workforce challenges that have emerged post-COVID and some of the uncertainties we face in that space. So I think we're doing a good job in terms of our shared understanding of the challenges we face and our strategic approach to dealing with them. As you said yourself just a minute ago, Provost, it's about the decisions then that need to be taken in order for us to make that progress. And that's an enormous challenge for us, as it is for all councils.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Mr. Laurie. Other questions? Councillor Richardson.
Excuse me. Yeah, so probably, I don't know if Amanda Templeman's on the call or not, but if not, it'll be Karen. So thank you. To provide an outline of how the council tax freeze sits within the ethos of the Verity House agreement and the impact it will have on the council budgets, please.
Who would that be? Miss Algie? Was Miss Templeman on the call?
No, she's not. No.
Okay.
So happy to pick that up. So at this point in time, we don't have the detail of the council tax freeze and what that will mean for the council. There's a lot of work getting done nationally. And once we have that, we will present information to members, and it will ultimately be for members to make a decision on the council tax as part of our budget planning process. And at the moment, there's work being done on how councils can be recompensed for the council tax freeze, what that means in practice, and what, importantly, we need to understand what that means for the council. We would hope that we'll get some information on that around the time of our budget settlement being known. That's almost at the end of December, so that wouldn't be available to be shared with members probably until the new year. It's still not clear, though, if the detail will be there. So we'll just need to wait and see what we have by that point in time, and we'll keep members appraised of that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms Algie. Councillor Richardson.
That's fine, thank you. Yeah, we'll look forward to getting the figures to see how much more it's going to add on to the budget cuts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Councillor Hannah, did you have your light on? Right.
I did indeed. I put it off because I think it sometimes causes feedback. Thank you, Provost. I'd like to kind of refer to page 61 first of all, just following on in terms of the council tax freeze issue. And there's been talk about difficult decisions for councils to make. I'm inclined to say that they're more like impossible decisions rather than difficult ones. It's a question of the frying pan or the fire. And obviously the council tax decision has stoked the fire somewhat. But looking at page 61, the Audit Scotland report said quite clearly that actually councils can achieve far better results when they're given more fiscal flexibility. And I wonder if the Chief Executive might be able to say a bit more about the impact on flexibility that the recent decision has had and how far that's going to give us the ability to decide on whether it's the frying pan or the fire.
Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you for the question. You recall that when we brought forward the financial strategy, we had three scenarios in relation to council tax. We had a kind of a base assumption of 5% and two other illustrations. One was 7%, one was 9%. Of course, this whole issue about the more that council tax is raised, albeit we recognise that has a significant impact on people locally, the less we have to take in terms of savings from services. So that balance is a critical one. And in terms of member decisions, that's a really important thing for you to be able to make a judgment about where that balance should correctly lie for this council, and particularly given this is a council which historically and indeed currently has low levels of council tax relative to others. So, and this picks up on Karen's point, what we don't know yet is what the compensating figure is going to be. So I think previously when there was a council tax freeze, the compensated figure tended to be 3%. So that's below any of the scenarios which we've set out. The average council tax rise last year was, I think, round about 5.25%. So if we get a figure which is round about that, then we're closer to the scenarios we set out in the financial strategy. But ultimately, what we're going to lose is that flexibility this year in terms of that really important element of that financial equation that we need to square. And my understanding is there will be an option for us without penalty to say that we won't take the additional monies and we'll raise the council tax by the amount that we determine ourselves instead. Now that would be, I think that would be a very difficult decision for members, but presumably it would depend on the compensatory figure that the government offered, and it's a matter for the council ultimately to decide. Councillor Aitchison talked about whether the council tax freeze sat within the spirit of the Verity House agreement. I mean, the answer to that is no. And to be fair, right across COSLA, every party represented there is clear on that view, because the Verity House agreement talks about local by default, and local by default means that decisions are being taken locally on the best allocation of funding, and loss of flexibilities, the fact of ring fencing, and we've talked about previously at various committees about particular examples of ring fencing which significantly reduce our flexibility. So the spirit of Verity House agreement certainly suggests we will have greater flexibility in future years. The 1 year imposition of a council tax freeze reduces that flexibility in the short term.
Thank you. I have a couple of other questions. Do you want me to do them now or come back later? The next question I have is about on page 66 of the report. There's a reference to the Policy Development Panel and reference to a community planning conference. Now, I'm on the Community Planning Partnership and have been since June last year. And since I've been on it, the first meeting, I think it was, of the Community Planning Partnership, there was discussion about the idea of this community wealth building event. I would really like, I know this wheels of bureaucracy run slowly sometimes and other priorities get in the way, but I would like some assurance that we are going to be moving on this, because in terms of developing more community engagement, that is a very important way forward. I'd also like some assurances about the Policy Development Panel, which has also been in the sidelines for some time, because I think it's important that if we are going to improve participatory budgeting, we are able to look in a forward-looking way at community engagement.
You would like to pick yourself, Mr. Laurie?
I'll perhaps specifically touch on the matter of the community planning conference, and in terms of the PDP, I don't know if Brian or Karen might want to pick up on that. I think community wealth building is an important element of how we engage with and encourage locally sustainable economic development, and that's we've seen some really good examples in both south of the border and in Scotland. Preston and North Ayrshire are the two that come to mind particularly, and I think it's important we do pick up on that. And I think that our progress on that has been relatively slow. I think the idea behind the Forth Valley Community Planning Conference focused on that issue was to help accelerate that work across the Forth Valley. The only thing I would say to Councillor Hannah is, if it's going to be a Forth Valley conference, then our partners in Forth Valley need to be prepared to be part of that. And it may be that at some stage we take a view that we press ahead anyway because of the issues is of importance for our communities. But it would be good to pick up on some of the expertise that lies elsewhere and taking our own work forward in relation to that. So in terms of the PDP, I think perhaps I'll pass to Karen on that. Thank you.
Ms. Algie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Convener. Happy to come in. The PDP was agreed earlier this year, and it was agreed around the same time as members also agreed to do a review of our standing orders and a PDP on sport and leisure. So there was a question posed to members around the order in which we take these to ensure that we didn't have them all running at the same time, recognising the pressure that puts on members to attend all of these as well as capacity to deliver them. So the standing orders review has now been is now up and running, and we hope that will be reporting at the end of the year to Council. The leisure PDP commenced a week ago, I think it was, and we're hoping to get the first date for the community engagement PDP in the diary before the end of the year. So I think diaries are being checked for that to happen. We've got the papers ready to commence that PDP, so that's not an issue. It's just we just need to find a date now to be able to do that, and hopefully, as I say, that will be before the end of the year. Thanks.
Thank you. And just finally, I would like maybe a little more said about page 70, 69, 70, the importance of the focus on community needs and inequalities. Really pleased to see the emphasis there on taking a whole systems approach. And I was lucky enough to be able to attend the trauma briefing yesterday, as I know one or two others were. And I just want to say that I think it's really important that the whole trauma question is bedded in the whole systems approach, that we do look at all our systems and how those systems impact on people who may have been affected by trauma. It was part of the discussion yesterday, and I think it's important that we have a look at all our systems in terms of how a trauma-informed approach is put into place. And I wonder if either the Chief Executive or possibly Karen could say something more about that.
Mr. Laurie.
Yes, thank you. So a couple of issues there. Firstly, can I just touch on that issue about focusing on community needs and inequalities? And I think this council has been really clear that supporting those most in need, focusing on the disadvantaged and on poverty are really important. There's been a series of reports that have come forward to the executive, which have received wide support from councillors, and I think we're all grateful for the support the councillors have shown on this, on issues around about child poverty and income maximisation. Indeed, and there was a briefing issued yesterday with an update on the work on income maximisation. Some of the figures in terms of the work that's been done there, I think, is really impressive. I suppose that I'd just say in passing, and it relates back to some of our earlier conversation, that if as a council we're clearly going to focus on those that need our support most, that does have implications for areas where we're going to provide less support. And I think we just need to be really realistic about that. In terms of the trauma-informed approach, we have appointed a new trauma officer. I think it was at yesterday's event, and is bedded within the Health and Social Care partnership. I think that's really important to build an understanding across the council of what trauma-informed practice is. And I think probably in some areas, children, family, social work, and within the Health and Social Care Partnership, there's a pretty good understanding of that. But I think we've got quite a bit of work to do beyond that, though I know that within Housing and Communities division, there's a real buy into that and a real focus. My sense of that is we've still got quite a lot of work to do on that. I wasn't at the briefing yesterday, so I don't know how that conversation developed. I did get some really positive feedback from those that were there. So we're kind of at a starting point in relation to that. We've made an investment and a commitment, and I think actually in terms of focusing on the most vulnerable and disadvantaged, that trauma-informed approach is a really important element of that. I don't know if Karen might want to add more to that.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Lorry. Ms. Algie, would you like to add anything at all?
No, I think that gives a really clear position of where we are. So nothing to add to that, Convener. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hanley.
Yes, thank you for that. Sorry, I should have started, and I meant to start by complimenting officers on the child poverty strategy and the income maximisation strategy, which have done a lot in terms of focusing on those who are the most needy and those who are affected by inequalities. In terms of the trauma-informed approach session yesterday, it was very, very valuable, and I think everybody enjoyed it. But it also did, as all these things do, bring up questions about the systems within the council which don't cause trauma, but may not be reacting as positively towards people who are affected by trauma. So that it was in that context. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll now go to Councillor Forrest, or was it Councillor Binney first? Councillor Binney first.
Thank you, Provost. Actually, I have two questions, both quite different, but I'll start with the first one. We all know that people make Falkirk Council, all the staff, all the members, all our management, all working together. And I notice in the report on page 34, there's concerns highlighting the workforce, that is recruitment is one, and high sickness levels. I do appreciate this applies to most councils, and a lot of that is to do with the pandemic. However, I note that people are retiring early. Obviously, that's their choice. However, what can we do to encourage staff to stay on? What options can we give them? As a matter of fact, Centre for Better Ageing has said 1 million more people over the age of 65 since 2000 are continuing to work, probably for various reasons. But I know we all appreciate the wealth of experience these people have got. So how can we incentivise this group to stay on? Has any work gone into developing new initiatives regarding this, increased flexibility, or deployment in a job perhaps that they might enjoy better? So I would value your response to this. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Binney. Ms. Algie?
Yes, thank you, Convener. It's a really important point that Councillor Binney makes, and we do have, like all councils, and you said in your question there that you recognise this as an issue that affects all councils. We do have areas of our workforce where we do have recruitment difficulties. And I think post-COVID, we have seen a number of people making life choices that have seen them move out of the workforce, and that's entirely understandable. But as an employer, it then gives us a different problem. I think it's worth saying that we already have a number of very flexible working options for our workforce. So there's a wide range of options available for them there, including term time working, flexible hours, etc. So there's a range there that we can do for the workforce. We also obviously have a flexible retirement option, which would allow employees to stay in the workforce, but to work fewer hours or to change jobs, for example. So that's available. I think well-being plays into this, and there's a huge piece of work that we're doing at the moment in terms of how do we look after employee well-being, because that's something that if people feel fit, able, mentally well to be at work, they will continue to be at work. So it's also about that too. One of the pieces of work that we're undertaking at the moment is an employee experience survey, and that's about helping us to better understand the views of our workforce on working with the council. we've done employee surveys before, but this has been a much more in-depth survey. So we've done questionnaires before. That's always helped us, but this has also included face-to-face meetings with employees or groups of employees to try and get views and thoughts. And once we receive the results of that, which will hopefully come in a fairly detailed report to us, we would then want to sit down and come up with some actions where we can hopefully then further develop that package to ensure that our experience for employees when they work with us is the best that it can be. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Back to Councillor Binney.
I do have another question. I'm really pleased about that in-depth employee survey, because it is really good to hear from all the employees of Falkirk Council what they want, you know, if they want to remain in the workforce. That's fantastic. I look forward to that. I do have another question. My question is, at the 1st of June meeting of the Scrutiny External, the CFO provided an update aimed at reducing ring fencing. The overview continues to highlight disparity between the Scottish Government 7%, COSLA 65%, and Audit Scotland 23%. So it's quite confusing that. Can we have a wee bit further clarity, and can an update be provided on this? That would be really helpful for us to understand this disparity. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Binney. Who would like to take that one? Salji?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Binney. So there is disparity over which of these figures is the correct one. I think we tend to use the Audit Scotland one of 23%, looking at that. But I think in response to your question, it's worth highlighting that the fiscal framework that we talked about before is looking at all of this work. So directors of finance across Scotland are involved in that work. So Amanda is involved in that work. And that is about looking at what areas are ring-fenced and what other parts of the our settlements can provide that flexibility that you're talking about. That's all part of the work being done through the Verity House Agreement as well. And that is progressing. It's probably not progressed as quickly as maybe councils would have liked it to. So there's a push at the moment to try and move that on, and just to try and see some progress in that, because I think it's really important for settlements as we go forward to see progress on that. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. First of all, sorry, I meant to thank the officers earlier for all their hard work. They've put in a heck of a lot here. But I've got a question here that comes off of what Ms. Algie mentioned in the passing earlier. In page 63, there's an ambitious programme to implement ward-based budgeting. Can a bit more information be given about what this involves? Ms. Algie, thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Yep, we are currently looking at our budgets across the council and trying to analyse how much of those budgets are spent in each of the different wards. Now, that is a significant piece of work to try and analyse that information. So we are looking at 3 pilot areas and just of functional areas within the council, and trying to do the work in there to learn from that. Once we've done that work and seen what the pros and cons of different approaches are, then we would hope to roll that out further. Ultimately, what we'd like to get to is a position where we understand within each ward how much of the different frontline budgets in particular are being spent in each of these wards. That then feeds into our participatory budgeting approach, as I mentioned earlier, because it's then about how much of these budgets are flexible and could be consulted with communities in terms of what we spend them on. But it also then helps to inform members in decision making about where we spend our budgets as we go forward as well. So that's essentially the scope of that. But happy to take any further questions on that if that doesn't answer your question, Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. You said 3 pilots are going to be done first. So what are those pilot areas?
I knew you were going to ask me that, so certainly one of them is
inevitable.
One of them is the whole of our Housing and Communities division, who are leading on this work, because Kenny has taken up the challenge of saying, well, if I'm going to ask others to do this, we need to look at the full Housing and Communities budget. And we are finalising the other 2 pilots at the moment, so I will get back to you on that later today, and I'll just say drop you a note with those. Thanks.
But you're keeping it quiet in the meantime. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor. For can I just ask, how would the consultation be done? How would we're not going to put a leaflet out or a consultation form to every household in the ward, but how would that be done? Was it with community groups or?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, sorry, Convener, there's a lot of work to be done, first of all, on analysing the budget information. Then we need to work out what amount of those budgets, what value of those budgets can actually be flexible enough to be put into participatory budgeting, because it won't be all of the budgets. Now, a really simple example would be, even if you take the housing budget, we already consult on that and on the use of that, but there's certain amounts of that budget absolutely required for maintenance, etc. So we cannot simply say to communities, well, here's the whole of that budget. So we need to work out how much can be put forward for participatory budgeting purposes. We would then look at different methods of community engagement. We have a new community engagement system that we have just installed. It's a very powerful tool, and it may be worth us just doing something to let members see that at some point.
Yeah.
That was launched in September, and since September we've had 6,000 residents sign up for that tool, which is really positive, and we're now continuing to work to encourage further sign-ups for everyone to participate that as much as they can. Now, that also recognises, though, that not everyone will have online access to participate in that type of engagement, so there would also need to be service-specific types of engagement depending on what we're consulting on. And some of that may be face-to-face meetings, some of that may be leaflet drops. It will be specific to each of the areas and as relevant to each of those areas, recognising the different needs out in the communities as well for that. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I think it's important that we reach out to different people than the sort of normal, well, the community groups who are people who have now been doing it for a long time and might, dare I say, have their own agenda. So it's if we can reach out to different people who've maybe never been engaged before to see what their views are. And would there be consideration for areas of higher deprivation? Would there be a different amount goes to these areas, or how would that work?
Thanks, Convener. I think we're at too early a stage to properly assess that at the moment, because we need to work out what the spend is in each of our areas first.
Yeah.
And once we've done that, it may tell us that there is actually a higher spend in some of those areas of deprivation. But if not, then there's a decision ultimately for members to take when different budgets come up for consideration and different options come up for consideration. There's a decision then for members to take about where that spend takes place. And that's about using the word-based budgeting information to help inform decision making as well, if that makes sense. Thanks.
And is this to ask communities what they think should be in their ward? Is that what's behind it, really? We can identify the spend, but is it down to communities, that 1%, to say how that 1% should be spent?
Thanks, Convener. Yep, essentially that's what it's about. So if you take the Community Choices programme that we have on participatory budgeting at the moment, that's where the community engagement part is essential to getting views on that spend. It's how we then mainstream this into our normal budgets with that 1% spend, and helping communities to engage in how we actually make some of that, where we spend some of that money. So that's essentially what participatory budgeting is aimed at. And the 1% figure is a national figure that we should be striving towards. all of this work is trying to help us to get to that position. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions? Councillor Aitchison.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Under 5.5 leadership, it says that the report recommends, and it's the fourth bullet point, work with the Scottish Government to rebuild an effective relationship. So that indicates to me that there is currently an ineffective relationship with the Scottish Government. Would that be the case, and what has been done to rebuild the relationship? Thank you.
Mr. Lorry.
Thank you, Provost. It's perhaps worth recalling that this report came out in advance of the Verity House agreement. So I think it's broadly accepted that it is important that there's a robust but collaborative relationship between Scottish Government and local government. The Verity House agreement was developed as a proposed solution to that. I don't think any of us ever thought it would run entirely smoothly or easily. We've already spoken about or touched on the issue of the council tax freeze, but the leadership at COSLA, and again, is across all political groupings representing local government, is very clear that we still need to work to try and deliver on the Verity House agreement in partnership with Scottish Government. I think if there wasn't such an arrangement being developed, we'd certainly be looking, we'd be asking for it as a sector. So this report was completed before then. We do need to have that relationship. Verity House should be the solution to it. It's its early stages. It won't be a smooth ride, but it's the best option there is going forward, I think.
Thank you. The Verity House agreement seems to have fallen at the first hurdle, but thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on the local government overview? No. Okay, so we'll go back to the recommendations. It's recommended that Scrutiny 1 notes the key messages set out in the Accounts Commission Local Government of Scotland Overview 2023 report. 2 notes that Falkirk Council already has a range of plans and action in place which are working towards addressing the key messages identified in the report. Can we agree with recommendations? Members?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the scrutiny meeting, and as Councillor Forrest and others have said, thanks to the officers for all the hard work that's been done compiling these reports and the work that's ongoing all the time. We really appreciate that, and we hope the Scrutiny Committee is a fairly positive place to come and to discuss issues and try and move things forward and improve performance. That's the whole objective here, really, not to be too critical of anyone. So thanks very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.